right, good evening and welcome everyone. My name is Amy and I'll be your library host this evening. Tonight we have Catherine Miller with us. She is the coordinator for Triple P, which is the Positive Parenting Program, which is a multi-level system of family intervention designed to reduce behavioral and emotional problems, which is part of the Boone County Early Childhood Coalition. This evening we're talking with us about the disciplining during a pandemic, understanding the importance of parenting while acknowledging your child's social and emotional health.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Unless you've been under a rock, we all know we've been in a pandemic this last year. One of the things that has come up several times in my day-to-day work that I do is how do I parent during this pandemic? What changes should I be making? What should I be doing? So I want to kind of walk through that with everyone and take into account like the social emotional health of children as well. So the first thing I kind of want to discuss is we still have to parent, right? A lot of times we don't realize, a lot of times as parents, we parented at top and bottom. So what does that mean? So we got our kids up for school, we got our kids ready to maybe go to daycare or whatever the case may be. And then we drop them off for, 6-8 hours a day. And then we pick them up and we got home, we did dinner, maybe some sports, dance, some activity, baths, homework, bed, right? So that's that parenting on the top and bottom. When the pandemic came, we had to parent in the middle too, right? School wasn't in session, people weren't leaving for work. We were just stuck with each other, so to speak. A lot of parents really kind of struggled with that and said, what do I do? I'm not used to being a 24/7 parent. Things are chaotic in our house. What's going on? What should I be doing? And so as we look at this, we're a year into it now. So hopefully maybe we're a little better at it. But if not, maybe we want to get a little better. And I hope tonight that helps us to feel more comfortable in living and working and doing and parenting through a pandemic. So one of the first things, regardless of your child's age, I want you to kind of think about is what does the structure look like in our house? So many children are back to school. Schools are trying to function and do their best to, have children in seats. So things have returned to maybe semi-normal, but, what kind of things are we still having to put in order? So the first thing I would tell you is structure. I will say a lot of parents wanted to give grace because this was new, right? Nobody wanted to be stuck in the house. Nobody wanted to not do the activities they wanted to do. And so we gave children grace. And what I mean by that is we maybe allowed behaviors that we didn't normally allow. Maybe we allowed our children to speak to us in a tone we didn't normally allow them to speak to us because we felt like everybody was overwhelmed. But now we're in a point where those behaviors have kind of maybe escalated or continued. And parents are at a point where they're kind of fed up, right? You don't talk to me like that. It's not okay to yell at me. And we're putting some rules and some structure back in place and children are pushing back. So how do we handle that pushback? How do we handle putting structure back in place? How do we handle consistency? I think those are all some important things that we'll work through. So again, the first thing is important is having some structure. It's really hard to discipline when we don't have structure in play. And so we may say things may be common sense not to do, right? We don't hit each other. We don't hurt each other. We don't curse at each other. There's a lot of things that make sense, right? But what happens when we don't have any rules in play? And so when we go to discipline, we say things like, I told you not to, you should know better than, it's not smart to, maybe we're negative towards our kids, you should have more sense than. Any of those things may pop out of our mouths, not intentionally, but maybe out of frustration, maybe out of annoyance, maybe that's just how you parent, right? And so what happens then? Well, if we're negative and condescending all the time, our children take that in and they start to question their value and their worth. If we are always yelling because we're fed up, kids take that in. And again, they may value their worth or they may value they may no longer value how you feel about them because you don't make them feel very good. So how do we still parent without that negativity? So the first thing, again, is putting some structure in play. So those are rules that we have in play, or those are routines that we have. So, we're back in school. Hopefully we've instituted a morning routine again. If you didn't lose that, then great. If you did, what does that morning routine look like? What's the expectations before getting out of the house? What expectations do we have of children? The second thing is, what are our evening routines? Does everyone know what's happening in the house? One of the things I like to talk about a lot is having family meetings. And so that, for me, occurs on Sunday. So we come together, we talk about what does our week look like? What are the expectations? Perhaps you're talking about who's picking people up, who is doing what they're doing. So I'm going to pause for a second. Amy just threw in the chat our pre-survey, and I forgot to mention that. Amy and I both did. So one of the ways that we are able to be funded, we are funded through the Boone County Children's Service Board. And what's important about that is, A, they pay me, and we keep these things free, but B, the way that we show them that people attend is we do a pre and a post survey. So that's a link to that. So before you leave, if you could click on that and fill that out, we'd appreciate it. All right, so jumping back to where we were, family meetings. So I like to have them again at the beginning of the week on Sunday evening so we can look at what our week looks like. So what activities do we have planned? Where do people need to be? What things do we need to do for the week? And that can help in many ways. So the first way is making sure that everyone knows where they're supposed to be. We have rides scheduled. If you have multi-children who are going multi-places, perhaps you're part of a carpool system. Perhaps you need to make sure that you can get everybody where they need to be during the week. Sometimes I had twins, maybe it's even remembering where everybody needed to be and making sure they got there, right? So that's part of it. It's also a planning stage. So helping your kids to understand these are the things that we need to do, and these are the places we need to be, and that you need their cooperation because you need them to, if they're coming out of school, you need them to come out of school on time. You need them to, if they're older, maybe you pick them up outside the building, you need them not to linger and talk to friends because you need to get home. These are all good conversations to have on Sunday night during that family meeting. During that family meeting, we also may talk about any expectations that we have for the week in terms of chores that are needed, when we might be able to get those things done. Just really a coming together of anybody who's going to be participating through the week. Sometimes we write down those things. So if you have a family board, some suggestions are a whiteboard that has the days of the week on them, and it's a monthly, and maybe you write things that belong to each child in a different color. So whoever has gymnastics is purple, baseball green, football red, so that you can color code each child and know what's going on. If we have back to school events or anything else, any other meetings that need to take place, we put those in colors and just kind of mark down below. So that's our first steps, is getting a schedule in place and knowing where we're going to be for the week and what we're going to do. The second thing is, when we have a schedule in place and we know what we're doing, is accountability. So we have to hold each and one of us, including us parents, accountable for the things that we say we're going to do or that we are tasked to do, right? So if it's someone's job to get off the bus and take the dog out and feed the dog because you're going to be gone for the evening, you are counting on that person to do it, because you're going to be the stop and go, right? You're going to pull in, pick up that child who may be at home, they're going to hop in the car, and you're going to go and do the rest of the task. So if the child who was home didn't feed the dog or didn't take the dog out, you're going to come home to a mess, right? And then you're going to be angry and perhaps upset with that child. The poor dog is going to be sad. It didn't get to go out. It may have had an accident in the house and it's concerned it's going to be punished, but just a snowball effect. So making sure that people are tasked with their chores and the things that they're supposed to do helps the house move smoothly, sorry. But let's say that child, you pulled up and you said, hey, did you take the dog out? And the child looked at you and was like, no. Right. So now you got to put the car in park. You're going in huffy. You're taking the dog out, or maybe you're yelling or upset, or maybe you're still calm and you're saying that has to be done before we leave. But now you're looking at your watch and thinking, oh, we're going to be late. Right. But it has to be done. So you're upset and you feel like that child deserves a consequence for not doing what was asked of them. Well, if that child didn't have ownership of it, right? We hadn't talked about it. It wasn't part of the plan. Yes, you can still discipline them, but it's easier for that child to take ownership when they knew what was expected of them. It's easier for us to accept accountability for things when we know what's expected of us. And so that's what we're trying to put in place, is some expectations that we have for ourselves and our children. And so maybe you this week find out that was a problem. And so to avoid that next week, because we're going to have the same schedule, let's say for the next 6 weeks, you put a phone reminder in for when they get off the bus. Let's say they get off the bus at 3:30, you put a phone reminder in, call child, text child, remind child to take dog out, right? So now you're trying to alleviate having the problem that when you pull in the driveway and you need to go, that child hasn't done what's asked of you. So we're putting structure in place, and then we're putting cues and reminders around that to help us be successful. When we do that, not only do we help the social emotional health of our children, but we're also helping them with our goal of being functional adults who are going to leave, right? So how do we help them to remember? So, they got in the car and they're like, oh, I forgot. And you're like, how could you forget? You knew you're supposed to take the dog out, but you saw the dog when you got home. Well, yes, all those things may be true, but how do we help them to set a reminder? Some people have devices in their house, such as Alexa. I have one here, so I hate to say the name because it'll respond and talk to us. Some have Google at home. So maybe you set reminders for those. You may set, again, an alarm on your phone to call and remind them. Perhaps you ask them to set an alarm on their phone or a tablet or device that they have, right? So we're putting structures in place to help us remember so that we can be successful. And if we have littles that we're in charge of course, they may not have chores and things, but what kind of things are we needing to put in play? So it may be part of your task with making sure that you've packed snacks because you know that you're going to have dinner late. You're going to pick up a child from daycare, let's say, and they have a snack at 2:30, right? So now it's almost 6 o'clock, the time you pick someone else, pick a kid up and maybe drop them at a practice before you can get back home, but that child is hungry. So did you pack a snack? That would be part of your job in helping to make sure that, the children that you're picking up from daycare have a snack and can be functional till it's time for dinner. So one of the other things I often talk to parents about is, what does dinner look like, right? That's at some point, it may not be we all sit down and have dinner together, especially if we're tasked with running different children here, there, and everywhere. What does dinner look like? If we have all different ages, it's really hard for the littles to wait till 7 o'clock to eat dinner because they're really getting ready for bath and bed. So how do we functionally handle making sure everybody gets fed? And so that's one of those things, again, when we have schedules in play, we can kind of see, is there a time when we're all going to be home, or are we what I call piecemealing it together for the evening? If you are in a 2-parent household, it makes it a little easier. Maybe someone can stay home with the littles and someone takes the bigs, or, vice versa, but there's maybe someone who can get dinner and things going at the house. If you aren't and you're doing it all, what does that look like in preparing? Right. So one of the things that I think is important is that you can get caught up in a fast food life, which can lead to an expensive life if you're not prepared. So preparing what meal's going to look like for the rest of the week is often helpful. So if Mondays and Wednesdays, you have to take kids to practice, then that needs to be a quick meal night. Maybe you are on Sunday, you're browning hamburger or whatever, ground chicken or whatever you like to eat because you're going to have tacos, right? So that whenever you get home, all you're going to do is heat up that meat that you had pre-cooked, throw some taco seasoning on it, and pop some shells in there, a little quick sides, and you're ready to eat. So maybe the prep for dinner that night is very quick, where it only takes you 20 minutes to get dinner on the table, versus you're going to come home and actually cook a full meal as soon as you get home. Those are things that are important to pre-plan based on what activities you have to have. What else? So we talked about kind of preparing and having a schedule. And then the second thing is that accountability phase that we kind of talked about. So what happens when we start to discipline our children and we see a whole lot of pushback? So again, we gave them grace. If we're talking about teens, there's a lot of teens that spend a lot of time in their rooms, right? They retreated there, or maybe that's where they had their social hour with their friends, but we maybe just didn't see them a lot. Maybe we didn't hold them accountable for responsibilities. We didn't demand that their room was clean. We didn't demand that they do a lot of chores because maybe you felt like you had the time to do them. So they just didn't have a lot asked of them. And now that we're back in school and we're back in life functioning, perhaps, now we're asking more of them and they're pushing back. Whoa, why do I have to do this? Why do you always asking me? And perhaps that doesn't sit well with you, right? Perhaps you're a parent that says, when I ask you to do something, I really expect you to do it without talking back to me and pushing back. So how do we get those teens to basically come back to the light? And so one of the things that, again, having that pre-discussion, what's going to be expected of them? So a conversation might look like something like, hey, we're going to be starting back the week. We're all going to be busy, but I wanted to talk to you about what the expectations look like. So if they don't have a sport, perhaps you say, my expectation of you is when you come home from school, you have 30 minutes to wind down, and then I'm expecting you to use the next hour for homework, hour and a half for homework, and then I would like for you to help get dinner started. And these are the tasks that I want you to do for dinner. So we're outlining what the afternoon or evening looks like so that they have some structure to be able to be successful. It's one thing to say, hey, I need you to help me with dinner. And they're kind of like, okay, but what do I do? And then you're annoyed. Well, food needs to be cooked, so you could just be helping to cook. But the fact is, oftentimes they don't really know what's to be done unless they're told. So have we set out that structure for them to be successful? Maybe your child doesn't like to be micromanaged, and so you want to give time frames. So the things that I expect you to have done are, and I expect you to have them done by. So if you don't roll into the house till 5:30 or 6 o'clock, then you may say, these are the things that I expect you to have done. I will have expected you to have had your wind down time for 30 minutes. I expect you to have worked on your homework, and I expect you to have ground fried the meat for us, and got the taco shells out, and laid out the rest of the things, the fixings to go with the tacos for dinner. I need all that done by 6 o'clock. So you're not micromanaging their time, but there is a time expectation. So when you roll home with maybe other kids or things, that these are the expectations that now you're bringing in the other kids, you're getting them washed up, and you're ready to eat dinner because that child has contributed. So what happens when we have sports and all these things going on? The rules still apply with respect and structure, but we also take into account that people have other things to do. So how do we divvy out things that need to be done in fairness? Again, those family meetings is a great time to say, here are all the things we need to get done. Who wants to do them? So at my house, we have things that are done daily. Our dishwasher, I tend to run the dishwasher every single day. Even with school going, the kids get up and they make food for the morning time. Often the dishes just go in the sink because everyone's in a hurry. No one got up in time to do extra things. I'm totally taking ownership of this. I don't like other people to load my dishwasher. So they do put them in the sink because at some point I'll load them into the dishwasher. But if the dishwasher needs to be emptied, my key to my children is I open the dishwasher. So when they come home, because I'm the last one out the door, when they come home, they'll see the dishwasher opened, and that means the dishes need to be put away. Now, usually that belongs to a certain child, so that's just the key to that child. Another way that I tend to communicate with, and I only have teens at home now, and we don't always see each other. So one kid's up at 6:30 going to football practice. I have another one that has 0 hours, so they're out the door 7 something. One's out the door at like 6:15. I don't feel the need to be up that early, so I don't always catch them. But if the other kid's out the door at 7, I may have gotten up at 7:20, and so we missed each other. And so my way to communicate is I put sticky notes on our microwave. My kids always use the microwave, and they're yellow or orange sticky notes. So even if they're not using the microwave, the way our kitchen is structured is they would see it. And that's my way of communicating with them. So I'll say, hey, I wash laundry, please. And I put their name on the top of who I want to do what. I'll say, please put the clothes in the dryer, or please unload the dishwasher, please start this for dinner. But that's my way of communicating with them. If it's something I want the both of them to do, I will send it. We have a family chat. And so I'll send a family chat. One of the things that also I expect for them is communication. So if they expect me to communicate with them and have expectations, I expect them to communicate with me, and we have communication. So again, with my teens, what does that look like? So one of my rules is, if you're going to change your plans, you need to let me know, right? Because I've made plans based off of you, especially if I'm thinking you're going to be home and I've had you to start dinner and then you decide you're not going to be home. Well, then we don't have dinner ready, and that's, throwing us off. So if you need to make plans, a change of plans, you have to let the family text know. But that's a rule that we set up in terms of having family communication. So I challenge you guys to discuss with your tweens and teens, what is your family communication like? How do you all keep in contact? I try not to text them during the day because I'm respecting that they're at school. I don't want them to get in trouble. I'm not expecting a text back. Sometimes I do text them when they're at school because it's when I remember, sadly, but I say, please do not respond until it's your lunchtime or you have free time, right? So it's not of importance. It's a mom's remembrance, and I'm not asking them to break the rules at school. I want them to communicate with me when they can. One of my children has a watch, so they can usually see the message anyways and decide accordingly when they should respond. The other one doesn't, but they have passing time. They all have a lunch, so there's time to communicate, especially if this is not urgent. So again, what does your communication style with the family members that are in your house look like? And we're talking about the ones that have the capability of having upper level communication with you or change of plans with you. What does that look like? Some people have a shared family calendar, right? So if you have an event that needs to be added or you're needing a ride, you write that on a shared family calendar. Some people use a Google Calendar, an Outlook calendar, but how does your family communicate with each other is something I challenge you to sit down and have a conversation, because the more communication you have, the better it is. And again, when we get to that stage of perhaps we need to discipline, it's easier for your child to accept your discipline when they can take ownership of what happened and why they got disciplined. I often say our goal is we are raising functioning adults to go out into this world. And so if you were at a job, your job would expect you to communicate, right? It's unacceptable to not have communication. You can't just not show up for work. You can't just leave work when you want to. So how are we helping our children set these boundaries in life that are going to help them to be successful later? And some of that really does start at home when there's expectations of communication. And if there's not clear communication, how are we working with them to strengthen that? And if they're unwilling to strengthen that, what are we doing to discipline that so that they understand it's something that must be done? So if that is a struggle within your household, and your answer to me tonight is I really don't know, that's something I'd like help with, you're always welcome to email me. Amy can throw my email in the chat, and we can set up a one-on-one and talk about what does that look like in your family and how can we do that. All right, so now we've kind of walked through setting up some structure. We've walked through setting up some communication. What does these boundaries and discipline look like with our littles? And so, or our younger, we'll just say our younger children. One of the things that I think is important is making sure that we learn how to talk to our children in a manner where we're setting them up for success again, but we're telling them what we want them to do, not what we don't. And I'll give you an example of that. Sometimes we tell our younger kids, don't jump on the couch, right? We don't want your feet on the couch. We don't want you jumping on the couch. Sit down, stop that. Well, what that doesn't teach them is what they should be doing, right? So maybe our rule is when we're on the couch, we have our bottom on the couch and our feet towards the floor. If we are watching a movie, we may put our feet on the floor, but we are laying on the couch, and laying on the couch looks like this. And we give an example, right? So we're showing them and giving them directions on what we want them to do, not what we don't. And the reason why I say that is I worked with a parent who constantly told her child what not to do. And he would question her or disobey her. So she said, no jumping on the couch. So he crawled on the couch. And she said, we don't crawl on the couch. And he would worm on the couch, right? He was purposely being disobedient, but he was not doing what his mom didn't say to do, right? So I wasn't jumping on the couch would be his response. I was tiptoeing on the couch. I was crawling on the couch. I wasn't doing what you didn't tell me to do, right? Double negatives there. So that mom really struggled with her child being what she considered outright defiant. And yes, at the end of the day, it really was. But we put some things in play in terms of telling that child what was expected of him to do, so that when he broke the rule, he got a consequence, and it was he could accept it better because he was the one who broke the rule. So when we made the rule of when we are sitting on the couch, our bottom goes on the cushion and our feet are towards the floor. If he was not sitting like that, his mother gave him a reminder, hey, how do we sit on the couch? And he changed his mannerisms of what he was doing, or he didn't, and she was able to give a consequence. And in doing so, she would say, you chose not to follow the rule, thus I had to give you a consequence. And so it was always his choice. And then it was her job to give a consequence because he didn't follow the rule that was made. And so it's harder to fight back and your kids to be upset with you about the rule when the rules are clear, and then we move right into consequences. So, we have rules in place, and we want to make clear rules. So that's one of the things that's really important with our littles when we talk about disciplining, because one of the things that we want to do is, again, teach our children to take ownership of their actions and the way they handle themselves. Because when we do that, we're also building their social emotional strength, right? I chose that, so I'm serving the consequence. And so when we have clear rules, again, it's easier to accept that I chose not to follow them. And now here's my consequence, right? So again, we're building children to be functional people as they leave our house. And when I say leave our house to go to school, leave our house as they get older to go to a job, leave our house to go off to college, right? We are building resiliency as they get older. So they are functioning members of society when they leave us. That means they know how to follow rules. They learn how to accept consequences. And that's huge, right? I know I'm going to get a consequence, but how do I accept it? And I'll talk about that in a second. And then being able to understand things change, and sometimes we don't have control over that. So if you had said, hey, for example, Friday night, we're going to have movie night, but you got sick and you weren't able to have movie night, being able to accept because there was a circumstance, we're not able to carry it through, but this is what we plan to do instead. And that's about being able to recognize and accept that things don't always go the way we want them to, but there could be a new plan in place. And we see that happen all the time with kids at school. Maybe there's an event that their teachers plan, but the teacher is sick, or there's something that's supposed to go on, but then, from circumstances out of anyone's control, it can't happen. They're supposed to go to a friend's birthday party, and then the birthday party was canceled, right? And these days where, people are now in quarantine and we can't have the party. And so children are really disappointed. And so how do we help children to take those emotions and work through them and process through them, right? And so we say to them, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to have whatever emotion that they have, but it's not okay to hit, hurt, harm, or act out in a negative way. What we can do instead is. So we're really helping them to transition through the emotions that they're going through. So it's okay to have a feeling about it. And it's not our place to tell our kids our feelings. It is our place to help them recognize. When they're younger, and I encourage you to check in with the library on books on feelings and emotions. But one of the things that we tend to do as parents, we teach our kids happy, sad, mad, angry, right? But we don't always teach them the spectrum of feelings. And I'll give you an example of that. So little kids on a playground, he's running to climb up and he slips, right? He slips and he falls down, he hits the ground and everyone laughs. And he gets up and he kicks the dirt and maybe he's really upset. And so you say, oh, you must be so angry. And really that kid is embarrassed. He's embarrassed that he slipped and fell. But now he's associated that feeling as angry. And so he must act angry, right? When we're angry, we act a certain way. So now he has to continue, right? You said, oh, you're angry. And that kid's like, oh gosh, okay, I am angry. And so now maybe I'm stomping and I'm yelling and I'm pushing, or maybe I'm hurting, because that's what I think anger looks like. But if we said, oh no, I'm sure falling might have made you sad, or it may have made you embarrassed, or you give a few emotions so they can pick, that child then knows how to better understand how they're feeling. But we also have to give them a chance to understand those feelings. So reading some books where the kids get an example to see that. When might you be embarrassed? When might you be annoyed? When might you be some other feelings that confident, strong, whatever emotion and feeling that we want to give with it. What do some of those other ones look like than the typical mad, sad, happy ones that we teach? So another way to do that with littles is for you to make a face and then have them mimic that face. And you can mimic with a mirror. So you can hold it up. So you can say angry face, and you both are right here looking, and you do an angry face, and you say, show me your angry face. And you let them do it in the mirror, and you see what their angry face looks like, right? So you're helping them to work through, what's a surprised face look like, and then you say, and then they mimic you. So you're helping them to get the emotions to be able to discuss them, because sometimes kids just don't know the right emotion to put with it. And when we label them one, you must be mad, then they know mad people act like this. And so sometimes it'll force them to act in a manner that maybe they wouldn't have if we hadn't labeled that emotion. So that's one of the things that I want us to also think about is when we're disciplining and when we're talking with our kids, how are we helping them to be able to learn what emotions go with what? How they're feeling in response to maybe being disciplined, how they're feeling within the moment of what's happened. How do we give them those words to be able to use? So being able to check out a library book or work through it, like the suggestion I gave you as doing the mirror, those are a few ways. And Amy has thrown in the chat a couple of places that you can check that out. So we've kind of talked about setting up structure. So we've talked about discipline. We kind of talked about emotions. And then let's kind of talk about that social emotional regulation. How do we help children get control of our emotions? The first thing is, again, being able to recognize them. So the more feelings that they recognize, the more you can work through them. But also, how do we help them learn how to calm their body? Some children just do it naturally, but some kids need some help. And so we have some great resources on social emotional regulation, but a few things. So one of the things is, and again, you can reach out to me and I'll send you these, but making a calm down jar is one of the things that we can do. And so it's with glitter and glue, but the child shakes it up. And we say, when all the glitter has gotten to the bottom, then we can talk about it, or then we can have discussions, but it just gives them a calming period. Perhaps we have a calm down corner. Now, this is not the same as the timeout corner or a discipline corner. We don't want them to feel like when they are having emotional dysregulation, they're in trouble. We want people to understand sometimes we get very, very worked up in our feelings, and we just need to stop and get control of them again. So the calm down space is a space where you can go and get yourself together, but you can choose when you come out. If we go to timeout, we're usually saying you have to stay here for a certain amount of time, or you're in this spot until you stop crying, and then I'll set the timer for 3 minutes. And when the timer goes off, you can come out, right? So timeout, hence the word time, usually have some time to it. The calm down corner is up to the person who's needing to calm down. How long does it take? What space do you need? How do you control yourself when you're in that element? And so being able to sit down and talk to them, if you made the calm down corner and it's in your house, you can bring them to be a part of it. What kind of things do you think would calm you down? So I have one one kiddo who really likes to color when they're mad. So being able to sit down and just color really helps them. I have a kiddo who plays with kinetic sand in their timeout. They've learned not to make a mess, so they can't, but they can squeeze it, they can squish it, they can, manipulate it, they can work through their emotions when they're in that space. And it's an okay space to do that because they're not hitting, hurting, touching their friends or other people in a negative way. And so they can kind of work through those emotions. I have another kid who just likes to rest. So he has a pillow. He has 4 pillows in his calm down space. He has a blanket. He has a footstool, and he'll lay down on the carpet and put his feet on the footstool. And so he likes to put a cover over his eyes, and he sits in the dark until he feels better. But again, they sat down and they talked about what kind of things do you think may make you feel calm. Now, can we always do that when we're out in public or someplace else? No. But if we're starting to teach our kids how to calm down, when we're out in another situation, we can say, hey, I think we need to calm down. Maybe we can go sit in a car and take some breaths. Maybe we can walk over to this bench in the mall and have a seat for a few minutes and take some deep breaths, or close our eyes and let's think about something happy. But teaching them it's okay to stop and regulate again really can help them to get themselves back in a space where they're ready to hear you or listen and be able to function again. So I had a parent reach out and say, I struggle to discipline my child right now because I feel like they are struggling. And because I don't know where they're at, I feel like it's really hard for me to discipline them. And so while I get it, and I completely understand, we have to realize where our children are at and act accordingly. So what does that mean? So if we are noticing our children are more reserved, they're not talking as much, they're holed up in their room, they're not communicating, then that is a problem within itself we need to work on. Do they need counseling? Do we need to have them back out to the family and socializing more? So maybe there's Friday game night and it's mandatory, everybody participates. How are we re-engaging them, right? That is in its of itself its own thing. But if they are still breaking the rules or not doing as you have asked them to do, then those things still must be disciplined accordingly how you have always done so. We can't not discipline them because we're worried that disciplining them may push them over the edge, right? We have to stay consistent as parenting in terms of our parenting, but then we have to make sure we're interceding on behalf of their mental health. If there is a concern of those two things bridging, then how are we setting them up for success? So that would be, again, taking us back. What kind of structure do we have in place? What kind of requirements do we have of them? What kind of expectations have we put in place? All those things come together in terms of helping the mental health of our child that we're working with or talking with, or of our own child. And so we definitely must deal with our child's mental health, but that doesn't stop you from parenting. And I hope that those parallels make sense to you, that you still have to be a parent, but we still have to work on their mental health. And together, and if we're doing them together, they should align, right? Your child should be able to understand, I made a mistake and I'm getting a punishment a consequence because of that. And then you're on your side, they didn't do what they were supposed to. They didn't follow rules and they're getting a consequence because that's what I said I would do as a parent. And consistency matters. Kids look up to us to be consistent to them because they want to know that they can believe in us, good, bad, or indifferent, right? If I say to you, if you don't do such and such, I'm taking your phone away, and you don't do it and I don't take your phone away, I don't have any real reason to do the things you asked of me because I don't think you're really going to take away my phone. And so when we do a lot of false threats, when we finally do mean it, when we finally follow through, we may see our kids explode in their response because this one time you actually did it, because they're not used to it, right? If you're inconsistent, their response is inconsistent, and that can bring us to a head and people are exploding because they didn't expect you to actually follow through. So when you're consistent, your child knows what to expect. and they can accept the consequences you give far easier. All right, so we kind of talked through a lot. I know we don't have very many participants on here, but what kind of questions might you have, or also drop me in if I haven't talked about your child's age, you know, are there questions that you have about your kiddos' ages? And I'll give anybody a moment to type in there. I feel like sometimes waiting so hard. You ever like listen to Jeopardy and they have like so long for the music to go and you think, oh, that's not very long at all. Or you're like, oh gosh, how long it is. I promise you, if you've ever thought about the longest minute, if you've ever been exercising and have to do like a wall sit or a plank, a minute feels like forever during one of those things. All right, so no questions. All right, so Amy has put into our messages a few things. So she's put in there some of our mental health picture books, some resources on checking those things out. She put in my email. Please, please, please email me. I'm happy to do a one-on-one with you. Again, these are sponsored by the Boone County Children's Service Board. So there's not an income requirement. The only requirement is that you live in Boone County. And other than that, we don't screen out anybody based on any other reason. So, you know, these resources are brought to you by your tax dollars, so we want you to utilize them. If you ever want a seminar like this, we can actually talk through many different topics. I'm happy to come present them at some place for you. So maybe you want to get a few moms together to have a discussion on something or a specific topic. Maybe you have a women's group or church group or Rotary group or any type of group that you want or thinking of. I can come present again, as long as it's in Boone County or for free. So let me know if that's something that you think, oh, that would be a great thing for us. I've done 4-H groups, church groups, like I said, women's groups, Rotary clubs, you name it, I've probably presented for it, and I'm happy to do so at no charge to you. It can be on an evening, planned ahead. It can be on a weekend. So any of those things that you might be needing, I'm happy to do. And then again, if anybody wants a one-on-one session, please email me and we'll get you scheduled. Other than that, I thank you guys for joining me tonight.